Welcome to the Goodman Report podcast. I'm Mark Goodman, principal of Goodman Commercial, a leading force in Vancouver's real estate market. Our firm is proud to be one of the top names in rental apartment buildings, development land, and commercial investment properties. Building on over 4 decades of commitment to advocacy and education, the Goodman Report is here to dive into the world of real estate, exploring the latest trends, market drivers, and insights. And along the way, we'll also introduce you to some of the most influential and fascinating voices shaping the industry. Let's get started. Today, we're spotlighting a man whose story reads like a blockbuster. Nelson Skalbania, the mythical Canadian dealmaker who flipped billions of dollars in real estate, participated in numerous business ventures, and bought and sold sports teams, including launching hockey legend Wayne Gretzky's pro career. Skalbania was born in 1938 into a Saskatchewan Polish family of modest means. His family moved to Vancouver's east side when he was a youngster. He likes to tell his friends that in the early days, he had to stay away from school on wash day because he only had one pair of pants, and that he had to walk about 10 kilometers from home to Vancouver's Woodwards downtown to buy a bag of groceries. A standout athlete and scholar, Skalbania graduated from Gladstone Secondary School in 1956 with straight A's, except in one subject. He captained the rugby and basketball teams and earned a scholastic scholarship that covered 5 years of fees at the University of British Columbia. He graduated from UBC in 1961 with a Bachelor of Applied Science in Civil Engineering, received a Professional Engineer designation in 1962, and followed that with a Master of Science in Civil Engineering in 1964 from the California Institute of Technology, known as Caltech, specializing in vibrations and seismic engineering. By the mid-70s, he became a West Coast business icon, flashy on-the-edge antidote to the traditional gray Canadian business world. He owned a private jet, along with a 180-foot yacht in the Mediterranean, and a private art collection that included Rodin, Renoir, and Picasso. Nelson was active in real estate primarily in the U.S. and Canada. During the 10-year period of 1971 to 1981, he brokered a staggering volume of over 1,000 transactions worth over $500 million on average per year. Nelson Skalbania probably invented the concept of flipping real estate. Skalbania's life wasn't without turbulence. A 1982 bankruptcy filing amid recession and overexpansion cost him $50 million, including sports losses, but his philosophy endured. Here are a few quotes to frame the discussion. In general, I was not afraid to tackle any size deal in any part of the world in any kind of business, so long as it was legal. So I was active in energy and mining in South Sudan and Los Alamos, New Mexico, various businesses in the UK, in Pakistan, the US, and real estate in 100 U.S. and Canadian cities. In 1981, the New York Times described his approach. Skalbania's real estate method, for example, is a sort of high-volume, low-markup blitz. And Nelson reflected, I only remember the good things in my life. I elect not to remember the unpleasant things. I blank them out. And famously, Nelson said, it's not the $1 million that's the problem. It's the dollar down. And now, let's sit down and hear from Nelson Skalbania. I'm thrilled to sit down with a true Vancouver legend and deal-making icon, Nelson Skalbania. From engineering whiz to real estate tycoon and the man who launched Wayne Gretzky's pro career, Nelson's life reads like a blockbuster. Nelson, thank you for joining us today on the Goodman Report podcast. Before we begin, I have to say that I knew you were an important person when I was a kid. I was 5 or 6 years old, and you were the only guy that my mom would let smoke cigars in the house with my father. You were the only guy, and you stink up the house for 2 weeks, but I guess you were cutting some important deals with David. And I have fond memories of you taking me skiing with your family, and I'm honored to have you here today. In fact, the reason why I'm stuck in the apartment business is because of you. My father got his start in the apartment business selling his first apartment building, which was yours, in 1978. It was a 20-suite walk-up building that he sold for $460,000 in the West End. Before we begin, Nelson, is there one deal from your storied career that keeps you up at night for better or for worse?
Not in one deal. There's several hundred deals. First of all, at my age, you get to cross a lot of paths. So I can tell you that at my age, I made about 11,000 mistakes in my life. And I can safely say all 11,000 was my fault, one way or the other. You can rationalize your mother or your father or your school or your daughter, but really the bottom line is your mistake. So there isn't one thing that I can pick up. There's several avenues I wish I'd explored more, but that's a long story as you go through. And why, I'm a structural seismic engineer from Caltech, two Polish parents, born in Krakow, never went to school, either of them. So he ended up being a carpenter, a communist carpenter. Although we're all Catholics, we were Catholics. My father ended up not being a Catholic, because the little church he comes from in Poland, dirt floor and all that stuff. And the priest there got the fresh fruit, the vegetables, the meat, and all the girls. So my father, after that, became a communist. So when we finally came to Vancouver, he became a carpenter, built his own house on Knight Road. And Polish priests would always come by and try to grab me to go to school or do something, but my mother would never let him into the house, I guess. So anyway, that was the kind of origin of why my father became a communist. And also, in those days, there was the CCF, which is the NDP now, and the Communist Party of Canada. Believe it or not, we had a party called the Communist Party of Canada. In our front yard was two signs always, only the CCF or the Communist Party of Canada. So, but then I got into doing other things. But I was a start. And then I ended up as a seismic engineer, where I graduated and ended up buying a company for $1, a third of a company called Mackenzie and Snowball. They were young engineers, relatively young engineers, and they did one-story buildings.
So what year was that? You were in your 20s at that point?
When I graduated, it was an MSc from Master of Science from Caltech in Pasadena. That's 1964. So 1964, I came to Vancouver as a seismic engineer, supposedly, and walk into their office, and they took the sign off. It was Mackenzie Snowball, and they made it Mackenzie Snowball Skalbania, and I bought a third of the company for $1.
You must have impressed them right away, Nelson.
So there's only three of us in the company. Within about 8 or 9 years, we now have about 120 people, and mechanical, electrical, and structural. And I bought out the two partners. I bought out Mackenzie and Snowball. So I ended up with owning all of this company, which gave me cash flow to go around the world and do things. So it's one thing to do real estate. And I used real estate like making shoes. When you're making shoes, how do you get money to build the next shoes? You sell a bunch of shoes. Well, I bought real estate. I got into real estate slowly and ended up buying real estate globally. Corpus Christi, Texas, Gila, Hawaii, Florida, Montreal, Toronto, all over the place. And I used real estate like you do shoes. So you need some money, buy some real estate, sell the real estate, whatever you do. And if there's many things to learn, I mean, thousands of things to learn. Number one, try and have one bank that has a line of credit that you don't have to, if you're lying on the beach in Nice, you don't have to sell something to pay for your beach. Finally get a line of credit that you have consistently. You don't buy buildings selling shares at 50 cents a share or something. There are not enough trees in this world to chop down to print those shares. So you need debt. So one of the things I never did learn, I used my own money. When you buy these toys, whether you buy a plane or a boat or stuff like that, you can't go to a bank and borrow money to buy a jet or a plane. And by the way, anybody can buy a jet. The trouble is to keep it up in the air. Rent,
right.
Fuel, pilots, lodging, all kinds of stuff. So the easiest part of all is to buy a plane. The hardest part is to keep it up in the air.
So you were buying and selling in order to fund these things as opposed to using leverage at the time, or it took you a while to figure that out?
After a lot of real estate globally, maybe I was hungry to do other things. And you needed some money. So globally, there was no place in the world that I wouldn't go to look at something, and no size, small or big, that I would worry about. And lastly, no business I didn't care what business it was as long as it was legal. So I globally did deals from South America to Africa to Europe in various things, thinking I was smart. But you find out you're not. There are a lot of people in this world smarter than you. And also you think I'm going to go to Juba, Sudan, and be a smart kid there when the guys that lived and born there are smarter than you. So you should climb on their shoulders rather than come in and take over things. So I made lots of mistakes when you go through.
But you're pivoting from real estate to sports teams to mining to gas. How did you understand these businesses?
I was always hungry to learn things. And in real estate, it's kind of simple. If there's any business in this world that you might teach your grandson or your kids to do that doesn't require much education, doesn't require much time or talent other than a phone booth, you can learn all you need to know in real estate in maybe 2 hours. You want to become a neuroscientist or a PhD in medicine or whatever, you go to school for many, many years. Real estate, one of the two businesses you can go to with no background, really, no education, no nothing. However, if you did have a background in education, it's helpful. But also, you don't need rich parents or other people to make you go ahead. You can do most of that stuff yourself. But you also, because you do these things around the world that are big, different businesses, different sizes, and you do all those things that I'm doing globally with not a lot of talent and not a lot of money, you tend to get into the odd trouble. So I kind of the 11,000 mistakes, that's probably one of the reasons. I ended up finally finished a book, a good 100 stories that I could tell are kind of interesting. I ended up at about 35 stories and I finally give up. But it's kind of different businesses, different parts of the world, different sizes, different rates of success. Great success, total disaster, and then many nothings in between. That's my life, basically.
So you told me before, we spoke a few times before the podcast, you said it's going to be impossible for me to tell you about each and every deal because I've had 70 years of hyperactivity. This is the word that you've used with me, Nelson, is 70 years of hyperactivity. And if you could just kind of bring me back to, so you're a young engineer and you get a taste for doing deals. You start off with real estate. And there was a point in time where, for a period of time, actually, I think in the 70s, you were doing over 1,000 transactions a year after year, of over $500 million a year for many, many years. How did you manage that physically, mentally? There were stories where you didn't even know what you were buying half the time.
No. Remember, I started as a structural seismic engineer. So you have a cash flow. And your clients were either developers or architects, basically, building buildings. And they would explain how they bought the site, the land, and how they financed it. That's number one, how they financed it. Many of them would boast about them mortgaging out. And others, they would buy a site, build a building, have no money in it themselves. Why? Because they buy something and it's worth much more finished and completed, and you borrow a bunch of money against what's completed, and that pays for everything. Except the poor structural engineer who's the architect and the builder is out in about 12 months. He's debt-free. But the poor structural engineer is there for life, and he's usually paid last because we're there forever. So we used to design buildings, and while they're being built, you have to go supervise them. So I'm at night worrying about this building falling over or whatever. So in the early years, you get to the point where you at least have a cash flow, and you also learn about what other people do and how they boast and how they finance out. So as a result, while I'm doing the engineering, I buy a 10-suiter for the company then. Well, geez, I'm making $5,000 a month. That's no, $5,000 a year. Not making a lot of dollars as an engineer. Yet, if you buy this building, this 10-suiter, which I did buy, we sold it in less than a year for twice the price, $1 million or $2. And here I work like hell all year for life and death, and I make $5,000, $6,000.
Right.
So that's kind of got me to follow the footpaths of the developers and the architects that are building buildings. So I bought a 10-suiter. We then sold it for a 15-suiter down the street. Then there's a 20-suiter and a 30-suiter, and then some land. Usually I bought a finished product. And that was my currency then, I guess. And then I ended up buying some sites and lands. And that's where
So were you still practicing engineering at this point?
I would practice engineer. And when I ended up owning all of the company, there were mechanical, electrical, and structural, 3 different departments. And I was not only the president, but got most of the jobs. And then in 1980, I have about 7 or 8 sports teams or 9 teams or whatever, and a lot of real estate globally. I kind of rewarded my team and staff by selling the mechanical division to the mechanical engineer, the electrical engineer, and the structural engineer. Each one paid me $1. So I have a 120 team making, just one of my great regrets. I think I should have stayed in the business. I sold the business in 1980, the year I remarried in 1980. Many things happened after that, but that was kind of probably my peak at that time, I guess. But that's what I did to finance and continue. And whenever you got into trouble, I never had a long-term debt. I had a lot of friends that I did a lot of business with. And Bob Lee, for example, Sam Belzberg, even Peter Brown. So I did not use banks at all to buy. In fact, you can't use banks to buy boats and planes and toys and stuff like that. And you didn't need it because you made money. You wanted to buy something, you sold a building, you make money. But as far as specific business, I did tie up a bunch of buildings from a company of real estate in 3 years. It was at office buildings, hotels, land from Vancouver to New York. As a matter of fact, one building was in New Jersey that I owned, and who made an offer to look at it was our president, Donald Trump. So I meet Donald Trump in 1978 in his office. He's a young guy then.
This is in Manhattan?
In New York, and at his father's office, and he was, I guess, in charge of real estate. And he owned the site next to me in New Jersey, which he looked at. We end up not doing a deal with him. That's the only time I've ever met him physically. But he was a young, brash, no sense of humor kind of a guy, serious, working for his father. It's the only time I ever met him.
Amazing. You talked about sports teams, and you're very well known for signing Wayne Gretzky. You've bought and sold many teams, and I think sports and athleticism has always been a passion of yours.
My first team, I'm doing a lot of stuff in Edmonton, and I did a lot of mortgages, debt with Northwest Trust and Dr. Allard and his son. But I needed $10 million to buy a building, particularly, and I needed a mortgage of $10 million. I go to see Dr. Allard, see him. His son says, "Go see my father." So I went to see him. And he says, "Okay, I'll give you the $10 million mortgage, provided you buy the Oilers off me." "How much?" $1. Hold it. Well, he didn't own it all. He had 2 other partners. But he put up all the money. So I says, "How much am I going to lose?" And he said, "About $300,000 for the year." Okay, what does that $300,000? So I bought the Oilers for $1 in 1977 and 78. And the trouble is, I was into supposedly $300,000 for the whole year. I was into $300,000 within the first 2 months.
Oh, geez.
So it was kind of bad after that. So the WHA at that time had 9 teams, and then there's 8 teams. And we had a lot of meetings in WHA for one reason only: looking for money or looking for people to buy somebody else out, because we were in trouble, whether in New York or whatever. And we used to do real estate deals while we were having these hockey meetings. Why? To help pay the rent is the main thing. And that's how I ended up in San Francisco and a lot of teams. But I was in Palm Springs in a WHA meeting fighting to save the San Diego Gulls, I think they were. It was owned by Ray Kroc, and his daughter with her husband ran the team. So they were wanting to fold. So that's the meeting that we had there, was for them to fold. And I'm in Palm Springs, and then I get a call from somebody to say he owns a big building in San Francisco. But he should stop by. So I stopped by on the way to Vancouver from Palm Springs, ended up buying this very large, all the thing in the Napa Valley, the big thing down there. But that's how you got into a lot of real estate deals and doing other deals. And how I got into hockey, because of that one guy in real estate to save the team, I guess. So then it goes down to 7 teams. And then they come up and say there's Indianapolis is going to fold. You have to buy it. And that's Benny Haskins, the guy. He was the guy that ran the league from Winnipeg. So I ended up owning the Oilers and end up buying 2 teams out of a 7-team league. And I'm a poor Polish kid from Vancouver. Holy shit. I used to fly on a jet, my own jet from Vancouver to Indianapolis for hockey games for one reason only. I'd have to bring a check larger than the entire people paying to watch the game in Indianapolis. That wasn't fun, I'll put it this way. Even though I got a key to the city, the mayor of Indianapolis gave me the key to the city when I bought the team. Of course, when I folded the team finally, he said a few other things. Go back to Albania or something like that.
Oh, jeez.
But that's how I started. So then, because you had a team, you're buried with other offers for the NFL, the NBA, and other leagues and other teams.
So what are some of the teams that you've owned over the years?
Well, the Oilers and the Winnipeg Jets in the Football League, BC Lions, $1 BC Lions.
You tried to bring NBA to Vancouver.
I had met the NBA team in Seattle and met the guys, and they said you can buy the franchise for $16 million. And I said, can I have 60 days to think about it? He said, okay. So I hire a guy called Bob Walsh from Seattle, who's a PR guy in the business, who came to Vancouver, and we did a 60-day program to see whether we should have basketball here. And the end result was, and I had even hired a coach called, he's got a nice email address, underhand.com. Underhand.com was his name. Then anyway, he had a coach that nobody else wanted to hire. So he did a 60-day program here and asked for anybody interested in the season tickets, write a check for $100, will not be cashed until I agreed to buy the league. So after 2 months and spending a lot of money advertising the team, we got a total of $2,100 checks. Well, that doesn't exactly pay for the team is $16 million, but that was the easy part was the $16 million. Hard part was to pay the salaries and the people and the overhead, all the stuff you need. So I go back to Seattle and say, I can't pay 16, but I'll pay you 12. And they gave me about 3 seconds to say, bugger off. No. They then sold for about $150 million to this guy from Portland. But
amazing.
Anyway, there's a long history. The Griffiths family ended up buying the team here. And that's how I ended up with Gretzky. When I sold Indianapolis, when I signed up Wayne Gretzky, I had a choice of putting him to Edmonton or to Indianapolis. I needed more help in Indianapolis. That's where he went first.
But how did you discover Wayne's talent? I mean, you saw something in him.
No, I had never even been to a hockey game at that point. But a guy called Johnny Bassett, a guy from Toronto, Bassett, had a few teams. He had Birmingham Bulls, and he's a good friend of mine. And in fact, I played his daughter, Carleen Bassett, was a tennis player. So I remember going to Birmingham, where he was the coach and the owner of Birmingham Bulls. So he's the one that said, I've signed up 2 or 3 17-year-olds already. I can't sign any more. You have to get the best one, Wayne Gretzky. He's the one that told me about Wayne Gretzky. He's 17 years old. So I had Wayne fly to meet me. And
the story is that when you interviewed him, you decided, you said, well, we're going to go for a run for an hour or something like that.
I didn't know, first of all, because I thought it was a great jock then. I ran every day. So I says, I don't know anything about hockey, but I know something about health. So let's go for a 6-mile run and we'll decide after that. So this 17-year-old hockey player beats a professional runner, even though I was 38 then, but he beats me. We then jumped on the plane. We signed him up. I signed him up, and he wrote it out himself on a piece of paper, and I gave him a check, a $50,000 deposit. And we landed, and I didn't fly to Indianapolis, even though I knew. We went to Edmonton first and introduced Wayne to the league then. But that was the start of it then. And then Whitey Stapleton, the coach of Indianapolis, so looked after Wayne first. He was an NHL all-star. He was in that final against Russia for all that. Anyway, he's a big guy. But when he saw Wayne's salary for 1 year, which was more that he made in the entire 12 years of playing for the NHL. They never paid a lot in the NHL in those days, 5,000 or 6,000 a month or something like that. They had not a lot of money. So he wouldn't play Wayne too much as a 17-year-old kid in Indianapolis. But that wasn't the reason. The reason was mainly I finally went to the city of Indianapolis and says, okay, I will only put up half the money. I want you guys, I want this team here. You put up the other half. And they politely said no. That's when I decided to fold the team, which wasn't fun, by the way. And I did fold the team and sold the players and said to hell with sports and hell with hockey and went back home. And of course, that was just the start.
Let me pivot for a moment. I sell real estate for a living. It's been 23 years, and compared to what you've accomplished, I think I'm kind of boring. I show up to the office. I have a team. We set our priorities for the day. On a good year, I think we'll do 35, 40 transactions a year. You were doing, year after year, on average, 1,000 transactions a year worth over $500 million, and that's in the 70s. You had yachts, you had private jets, you were doing...
Almost all from real estate.
All from real estate.
I ended up buying 31 Eaton stores across Canada, land development. And the big one I did in Winnipeg, which was the old Winnipeg Eaton's catalog store, the big 5-story building behind the main store in Winnipeg. Young Eaton said, okay, we'll sell it to you for whatever price it was, provided you buy either the yacht or the home from us. So I said, well, how much? He said, well, whatever the market is, whatever. So they offered me the Shimon, which is Indian for canoe. So that was a 180-foot yacht with a full-time crew of 13 that was based in Barcelona in the Mediterranean. So then I went to look at their home, which was in Barbados or someplace. I remember driving to Antigua, and I looked at their home down there, and I said, no, I guess I didn't want to, I don't know, whatever. I ended up buying this yacht because I bought the real estate. The downtown Eaton store in Winnipeg had to also buy the yacht from them. So it was not such a great deal. I had it for 2 years in the Mediterranean. And then I said, maybe it's time I brought it to the Caribbean. So I moved it from the Mediterranean and going to Costa Rica or someplace. And on crossing the Atlantic, it's a twin screw thing. The one seized up. So we staggered into Puerto Rico. So I kept the economy of Puerto Rico going for about a year, babysitting that yacht. And then a real estate guy here, Mary Hooper, says, I want to convert that to condos. So he went and buys the yacht from me in Costa Rica, or Puerto Rico. And I could keep one of the staterooms as my part, and he'll do the rest. So he then started keeping the economy of going for the next year, at which time he dies of colon cancer. So this boat, the Shimon, sitting in Puerto Rico, whatever, half finished, half converted. I never went back, never saw it again. Don't know what happened to it.
So Nelson, how did you manage? Did you have a staff? Well, like, what time did you wake up in the morning? If you're doing 1,000 transactions a year, how did you manage your life? Did you have a personal assistant? Did you have were you working 20 hours a day?
I can't call it work. When you're traveling around a lot and looking at things, it's not things that required a lot of technical work and engineering or whatever, because they're simple buildings. They're rented or not rented, and you build them or not build them.
So what did you look at? You were making multi-million-dollar decisions within seconds, multiple times a day. What was your criteria?
Well, number one, whenever you tied up something and you looked at it, you finally removed the subject clause on roughly 2 reasons. One, you could finance it, number one, without a lot of equity. So that's a good criteria. If somebody else will put up the money to help you buy it, that means it's probably good. And the second thing, you try to resell it before you have to close. If you don't get any offers to buy it or any offers to finance it, you don't buy it.
And then you lose your deposit.
Oh, no. Most times, and they're all refundable deposits until you remove your subject clause.
Got it.
However, later on, you get to be too cocky. And
Right.
I have a few deposits out there that were non-refundable, and I did lose $500,000 here and that, whatever. I did lose the odd deposit, but I was too cocky and too full of myself at those times, I guess. Long since I found out that there are many people smarter than you in this world, and sometimes when you have a board meeting, which is yourself in a room making all the decisions, guess who makes all the mistakes? The same guy in that room. That's me.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't have a board to blame anybody else on.
But you must have had a team of lawyers reviewing these contracts for you.
Yeah, not the contract. No, you don't need, not for real estate. You do them all yourself. At least review them yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And most lawyers don't do a lot of real estate. There are some that are special that do that, and that's fine. That's better. That's okay too. But I didn't use a lot of lawyers.
So people were chasing you. You must have had 100 deals a day come across your desk.
Number one, they liked doing deals with me because they knew it was for sale. If I bought it, they knew they could probably resell it. At least a potential second commission, a second client. So I had a lot of people send me a lot of deals. And I didn't have any problem looking. The deals are kind of easy to do. Either you can finance it or you can mortgage it. One of the two, but it kind of qualifies you. That's how you go through life. Then, of course, things happen when prime hits 24%, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, what happened to you during that time?
It was easy. At 24%, what do you sell to pay the rent? You sell the toys that have no debt. So all the toys I had, planes and boats and homes even, had no debt. So those have to go first. So then try to sell a piece of land that's got now a 24% mortgage with no revenue. So where my difficulty was, and Jack Poole, for example, he had day-on developments. He was doing a lot of business too, but he went down to the tune of $2 billion. But he had mortgages with other companies, and he was bailed out by BCE, or the big company back east, and continued for the next few years. And then he blew another $2 billion on it, and then he went into Concert Properties, which is a very successful real estate development company, using the unions, put up a bunch of money on it, but whatever. But Well had some problems in 81, 82, with prime hitting 24%.
So
nothing made any
compare
sense.
That time to today, where we've had almost 4 years of choppy market environment. My father said, "What's the big deal? They've gone up from half a point to 5." And I said, "Well, you went up to over 20, but it was only a 3 bag. We went up 5 times in a short period of time."
Well, there's a little bit of difference here now. The first mortgages were 5-6% in that area. Secondary financing was 18-19%. In my day, you had trust companies like First City Savings, Northwest Trust, Columbia Trust. They would put the second mortgages. They had the stuff on top of the equity. It wasn't in that 20% level, which it is today.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy things at 5 and 6% if you get some first mortgage, but the secondary money is either cash or you try to get a second mortgage on it. The second mortgage money is quite expensive these days, so that's a bit of a difference. Certainly, I regret not. Depends what you do, what you go through life. Of course, you'd like to have money. Of course, you'd like to make an income line in your beach and whatever it is, and not have the rent paid because you've bought a bunch of stuff. That's what a lot of guys do. Some people don't. But it's nice to have a bank that's with you all the time. So if I get in the business world, what do the Ismailis do quite a bit? The Sikhs do quite a bit. You buy a building for 10 million or 20 million, you don't have it. But you go to the same mosque or the same church and you accumulate a bunch of friends. The Ismailis here, for example, almost half the real estate, half the hotels in Canada.
That's right.
They're doing quite well, because hotels were always tough to finance because there's not a regular income that you could beg, borrow, and steal. So that's why the Ismailis then, or other guys like that. Not only that, Catholics too. Get friends, assemble a bunch of friends and stuff, and you go to the same church and do all that stuff. So you start small. And you don't need an education. And don't buy it unless you can finance it or resell it. That's kind of a nice indication. Then if you do, if you make some money on it, well, buy a bigger one.
What would the 30-year-old Nelson Skalbania do today in this market environment?
I established long-term debt, number one. Number two, don't sell everything. I had 5,000 acres in Pitt Meadows. Bought the 5,000 acres at 5,000 an acre in Pitt Meadows from the Dutch that reclaimed Pitt Meadows. I sell it to Aquilini. He bought the whole 5,000 off me. You think I should have just kept 1 acre? Never mind 10 acres or 20 acres or 100 acres. He wouldn't have mattered a damn. And I could have done it. But I was too cocky in those days. That's what I should have done. And now the land is 100,000 acre.
Well, it's coming down.
It's coming down. Well, it's coming down here now because of debt. And to carry things, you can't get any debt right now, especially in real estate is hurting right now. You're in the business.
It's been a tough slog, Nelson. That's for sure. I mean, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but there may be another couple of years.
I can safely say, try not to sell. If you can get away with having income to pay for everything, don't sell today. But if you have to sell, you sell, as I had to do myself.
There's a story, just pivoting from real estate, because you've done so many other deals in different areas. One of them, there's a story where you flew down to pick up a bunch of Renoirs and Monets and blue chip real estate in a private jet. And that was an interesting story.
Way back, I supervised one of the buildings I did in the West End. And a big guy comes up to me and introduces himself as Aldo Retzeli. And he's from Chile. And he had a site in West Vancouver that he wanted to build on and had no contract. And I was just supervising the building. And he said, would you build a building for me? So out of the blue, a guy walks up to me in the street when I'm supervising this building. I ended up doing the architecture, doing all the engineering, and building this 10-story building in West Vancouver for this guy from Chile. And he ended up selling it, doing whatever he did. A year goes by, and all of a sudden he calls me in 72, and says, he tells me the story. There's a revolution in Chile. One of my 5 revolutions or so. It's a revolution, and you should come down and bring some cash. And I said, well, what's left there? Because a lot of them end up in Vancouver. The jewelry and money and cash like that was portable. It's gone. So I said, what's left there? He said, paintings. And so he tells me Renoir, Picasso, and all that stuff. And of course, to buy a Picasso in those days, it's difficult. You had to use real money. So I ended up making 3 trips to Santiago from Vancouver, carrying a total of 100,000 US. I made 3 separate trips. I met an art restorer guy that looked like Salvador Dali with a big mustache that took me around to bank managers' homes. In the midst of all the fighting and the shooting, it was a revolution there. And I go to bank managers, and he has a painting behind his desk, and how much? So at that time, it's 300 to 1. $1 US, you could buy $300 worth of something. That's how crazy the debt was down there. The scooter was disappeared. So I go to a bank manager's office, and the painting is there, and on the back of it says, "National treasure cannot leave country," that kind of stuff. So supposedly somebody had done some work on him. So this guy takes me around many places to show me things for sale, horses, cars, and that kind of stuff. And horses and cars, I don't know how the hell to get them out of the country, but somehow or other I thought paintings I could do. So I ended up buying 25 paintings, Picasso, Monet, all this kind of stuff, and bring them all. And I left that bad day. And so I'm on a plane with 25 paintings that I had to pay the customs guy to put on the plane with the frames.
You had to bribe them a little bit.
I had to encourage them.
Them.
I'm on the plane, and as we land, the newspaper is Allende was assassinated or committed suicide. That day I left Santiago. So here I am with 25 paintings that are colored, is the best I would call them. And so I never went back to Chile because I figured that it was too suspicious. On the day I leave with 25 paintings is the guy the day he was assassinated. So I did end up taking some of the paintings, pictures of them, to Christie's and Sotheby's. And of the 25 paintings, they told me 23 were fake. Well, there's different kinds of fakes. When Rembrandt painted the painting for and sold it for $500, his neighbor across the street would copy him and sell it for $5, $7.
Right.
So many of my fakes, well, because how did the paintings end up there? They came by boat around the Horn and then up the coast to Chile. So they're all old as hell, but who knows? So many of the paintings were not correct, put it that way. And one thing, though I got into the art gallery business and owned a big gallery in town, but what was most important was provenance. Provenance, the history of the painting. The best example is that when I had the gallery here, Gallery Royale, I went to an auction in London, bought a painting for 66,000. 66,000, one painting. And it was by Sir Lawrence Alma Tadema. It was called Cleopatra on the Nile. I paid 60. A lovely painting, big painting. Nice woman on the Nile and Cleopatra. Anyway, I ended up getting divorced in 1980. And my late wife, Audrey, got the painting and she sold it for $250. So then if you follow on to the year 20, you can Google it actually. And the second, there's the Wall Street Journal has a business section. And the picture on the business section of the Wall Street Journal of 2002 or something is a photograph of my painting. And below it, it has the Provenance Gallery Royale in 1976 or 75 or whatever. And it sold for $33 million US at auction.
Oh, geez.
So I started with the painting that cost me $66,000. My wife sold it for $250,000. And then many years later, it sold for $33 million US in New York. Oh. Anyway, that's part of the history of sometimes owning things for a while rather than flip them or sell them.
I mean, on one hand, if you weren't so hyperactive in real estate, you wouldn't have got to where you are. But at the same time, if you held on to some of your assets,
absolutely,
you would have been farther ahead.
Absolutely.
So Nelson, during your hyperactive years, are there any standout deals? Like, what were your biggest hits? Some of your monumental transactions or stories where you would do a deal in the restaurant on a napkin, hop in a cab, drive 3 blocks away and flip it for $1 million an hour later. I mean, these mythic stories.
Well, when I end up buying, I have my jet in Edmonton and I'm doing I did a lot of real estate, and I get a phone call from a broker that Abbey Glen, an English company, had bought all of Sam Belzberg's real estate from, I call them. It was a trust company that had a lot of real estate. And the two guys lived in Winnipeg, were managing this estate for the English. And they thought some of the stuff might be for sale. So because I had a jet, I flew that night and landed in Winnipeg to see the president of this company. He shows me the inventory. I do a deal to buy about 7, 8 buildings then and there and give him a deposit. How was I gonna pay it? I had the figures on them and I ended up selling some of the buildings, financing some of the buildings to pay for it. And they were a public company, so they needed that sale to show earnings per share, I guess. Year comes by, they have another package for sale. And they call me up and say, you bought the first one, did okay. So they sent me a second package of real estate. At that time, it might have been $120 million, which is a lot of money in those days. And several buildings from Winnipeg to Montreal to US, Canada. And I ended up buying it for, I can't remember what it was, but I gave them a deposit and I ended up doing the same thing. Building by building, either sold the building or financed the building to pay for it. And then the third one comes along, the big one, 1977, 78, which is office buildings in Montreal, New York, Poconos, Vancouver, all kinds of hotels and shopping centers, all this package. I had to buy it all. The third one. Why? Because I already closed on 2 and they were quite successful. They announced those 2. So on a Friday, I sign all the paper and I had 18 million or 16 million from a mortgage company as the final debt. And I've signed all the papers in Calgary, fly back that morning, and I'm having lunch at the place on Georgia there with Bob Lee and then the head of the Bank of BC. I'm having lunch with them. It's Friday noon. I'm supposed to be closing on this huge package of real estate, which I bought and sold and financed. And the 16 million that I paid a fee for.
How much?
60. It's one thing to have debt, another thing to have equity and capital on top. So the last 16 million I borrowed from a supposedly reputable mortgage company from Toronto. and paid a deposit for it.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, they're going to close on Friday. They don't show up on Friday.
Oh, no.
I had left Friday. So I get the call I thought from the bank and the guys in Edmonton and Calgary that the deal is just closing. Instead, they said, you're short 16 million. We can't close. So what am I going to do? I'm here with Bob Lee and this guy from the Bank of BC, at that time Bank of BC. And he said, well, so I have to call the sellers. And I had $500,000 non-refundable. And they said, what can I do? I can't do it. And they already announced the sale because they're a public company.
Oh,
and they're embarrassed. And why? Because I already closed on 2 of them. Why not? So he said, what can I do to extend it to Monday? I'll get the 16 million. I no idea where I'm going to get it from, but anyway. So he says, okay, you put up another $500,000 non-refundable today.
Oh, no.
And you can then close on Monday. This is Friday, noon. Oh, and Bob Lee, so I go back to Bob Lee at lunch and, oh, shit, I need 16 million. It's okay. So we sit down that night and Saturday and I get the 16 million.
From Bob?
No, from Bob Lee put up 4 or 5. Sam Belzberg put up 6. For a city of 6. And so I end up packaging. And how did I do it? By pre-selling some of the buildings or mortgages. So Monday morning comes and the guy got desperate. The guy that I paid a fee to get the 16 million from Karsten von, his name was Karsten von Risseby. He's a German from Toronto. He said, oh no, we got the money now. We just wanted the money. It's okay. And I said, I've already done a deal to get the money. You have to go back to them, see if you can go back to them and do what you have to do to get out of the deals. So I go to Sam Belzberg and say, you haven't written the check for 6 million. This is Monday, but the same morning, Monday morning. You haven't written the 6 million yet. What will you take not to write the check for 6 million? He wanted 500,000 or 600,000.
Okay.
So I said, okay, I'll pay you the 500,000. I went to each one of the guys. I go to Bob Lee. You want your money back? He had the hotel in Calgary under contract. He says, no, I'd rather have the hotel. He says, okay, you can have the hotel, but I can't do it till we need the money. We'll close after Monday. He said, okay. So that's what I did to raise the 16 million. Now, most times on real estate across the country, 2 countries, you have to have board meetings. You have to have appraisals. You have a bank. Well, I didn't have time to get appraisals. Never had time to do this. He needed cash. So that's what I did. That's what you could do in those days.
So the relationships that you had with the Belzbergs and the Bob Lees were very important to your business.
All handshakes. Bob Lee especially. He's put out a book recently. He's on the page. He did much of the financing at UBC. All those.
So the late Bob Lee, no.
The late Bob Lee.
Mm-hmm.
But he was needed $1 million. He would put he put $1 million. What do I get out of it? You can come for half, do what you want, whatever. So usually I'm in Greece or someplace, and he did things like that. That's what you could do in those days. You couldn't go to a bank and do it.
So you're flying high. You're making millions and millions and millions of dollars a year. You've got jets. You've got yachts. You're buying Picassos, but you haven't come out unscathed. You've had
no.
You've had some hiccups over the years.
No. So what do you sell? There's a thing I learned from Jimmy Pattison, by the way. One of his big rules. If you have 2 assets, a good one and a bad one, you don't sell the good one to pay for the bad one. Let the bad one go. Don't be embarrassed. Let it go. I never learned that. I always had to pay the bills no matter what. That's my background. My parents never had a bank loan in their lives. Not a bank account. They wouldn't buy a stove or a fridge unless they had the cash to pay for it. And you have to.
Well, it was frowned upon. Having debt was frowned upon.
Well, because it's unavailable. and you had to have credibility in those days. You had to have borrowed a few dollars and paid it back, and then you have credibility. The worst part about it is don't have any debt and don't pay any money back. Then try to get a loan. Good luck. You have shitty credibility because you have borrowed any money, you haven't paid it back. So you always need some debt or pay it back and be current on it. And that's why I say one of the reasons you do going through life, make sure you have a bank that you deal a lot with, and then you have a line of credit or a credibility that you've bought money or borrowed money and paid it back. I never did that.
So at 87 years old now, Nelson, what does your day look like? Are you still doing deals?
Hopefully. I'm not dead yet.
Well, I'm
So
glad you're not.
I'm doing some mining stuff and so doing some real estate mainly. Most recently, I can even tell you, I met a guy that's in the gold business. It's called Lincoln Gold Medals. Christ, Lincoln. That's my birthday. Abe Lincoln, the same birthday as mine. So I kind of liked it. And it's in Nevada. And it's in gold. What's more current today than gold in U.S. and Nevada? On the way to, I have a place in Puerto Vallarta and in Palm Springs. So going down south is nice. So I did. I bought a few shares in this thing called Lincoln Gold. All of a sudden, somebody else comes along, and I did a deal with the president of the company. I didn't realize he didn't control the company. Somebody else smarter, I guess, than him ends up going to one of the assets that the company had bought and issued shares for, and buying that block of assets to give him control of the company. So it's a thing that I was middle of doing something with that I liked, which is in the gold business, and it's in a program called a thing called heap leaching, which is a process of producing gold from gravel or thing, low grade, like 1 gram. There's roughly 30 grams per ounce. So if you have 1 gram, that's what you have on one of your teeth.
That's right.
So you need a lot of dirt to go through to make sure, but make it economical. Anyway, that's what I was doing. And then as real estate, there's a lot of malls for sale in the U.S. I think there's like 10,000 malls for sale. Walmart has maybe 900 malls. Sears has about 700 or 800 malls. These are from 100,000 to 5 million square feet. One in Atlanta is 5 million square feet. These malls are either empty or on the way to being empty, broke or on the way to being broke. 11,000 of them in the U.S. So the issue now is, and why are malls there? Because somebody pays the rent. In other words, somebody brings the traffic in. So all the malls have a Sears or a Walmart or somebody that brings in the traffic for the cheap stuff. But around it is the lawyers and the accountants and the travel agents and everything else that pays the rent in the mall. So these malls are for sale at less than the land cost. So for example, a friend of mine has bought 20 malls from Walmart, like 200,000 square feet in Dallas, in Albuquerque. They're empty, totally empty, but the rent paid by Walmart, which is bigger than God, if you don't know. They have their own mortgages. There is no mortgages on these things. So if you can find somebody to replace the Sears or the draw and put things in there that then pay the rent. And what are people doing now? Converting some to seniors' homes, to hotels, to low income rentals, doing many things to try and restart an empty mall, which there are a lot of them in the U.S. So, and it's real estate. So that's kind of what I was looking at.
Well, I would invite all the listeners that are listening right now that if you have a deal that you think Nelson Skalbania should look at, it could be a Picasso, it could be gold, it could be distressed real estate plays, send me an email and I'll put you in touch with Nelson.
Well, you can't sell it to somebody else or mortgage it to somebody else first.
So you've had a long and storied career, Nelson, and at 87 years old, you're still doing deals. What wisdom would you impart on people now? There's a lot of people in the real estate business who listen to this podcast. They may be engineers, architects, mortgage brokers, realtors, developers, and other stakeholders.
Well, I've told a few of the things. Number one, make sure you have the debt of the place that you can get debt, that you have a history of getting debt. Mainly one of the banks. In the old days, you had trust companies, all kinds of them all over the place. Many of them went broke for a reason. But number one, have some debt. And number two, whatever debt you have or whatever business you get into, it'd be nice to have a business that you can lie on the beach in Nice and have it paid for because you have bought this business that has income in it. And that is, with this apartment building or rental building or office or whatever, it's nice to get into something that pays the rent without you getting out of bed.
So in other words, have a safety net.
And how do you get to that point? You start small or have a lot of friends that have some money in a church or mosque or whatever these guys used to do now, which is what they do. You start small and go bigger. You can go bigger by using money.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you get money from? Either by buying something and selling it and getting some money, or having friends or neighbors or partners, especially if you don't have any to start with. You come from humble beginnings, I guess. But I have two very hardworking parents. But
you didn't have any money growing up, did you, Nelson?
No, I remember when going to school, you have one pair of pants. And the only way you went the next day is your mother washed the pants because you had to walk around with your underwear on because the pants were all dry. You always had one good Sunday suit, though, that you never touched. Sunday suit sat over there. We couldn't do it to go to school with. But no, I had no money. I did well. I had an older brother, 1 year older, and he went to school, Gladstone, brand new high school called Gladstone, and he never got a B. He got all A's. He ended up in a fellowship in the University of Washington in engineering, aeronautical engineering and mechanical engineering. Worked for Boeing's. Whereas I'm following him. So when I got a B the very first year, my mother said, "How the hell?" You wouldn't know the difference, but still saw a B. So I never got after the first B, I never got any more. I had to follow my brother. So we did quite well in sports. We didn't have football teams in those days. We had rugby teams, baseball, and stuff like that. But you start off in Gladstone High School in the East End. I don't know.
Amazing.
And how do you get money? Exactly the way I showed you.
So, Nelson, you mentioned that you've had some hiccups over your career, and one of them was being...
Well, one major one.
One major one. Why don't you tell us about it?
I'm in kind of in a heyday after 1980, and I never had a trust account. I have one bank account doing everything. For example, I had two teams in Calgary. One was called the Calgary Flames, and then I had to buy a soccer team called the Calgary Boomers. They call them the Boomers. So all of a sudden, I learned two things. I'm in the NHL and hockey, and then we have the soccer league, which is the Cosmos in New York and that kind of stuff. So I buy this team in Memphis and move it to Calgary. Why? Because you made money in the sports business. So here, the league then folds. All of a sudden, I got expensive German players. They're all Germans in Calgary. Vancouver, all English, the Whitecaps. So the league folds. What am I going to do with a bunch of expensive German players in Calgary? So what do? You sell the good asset. My business. I remember at that point I owned 51% of the Flames, with a total investment of minus $2 million. So I ended up financing all of the Flames, and minus $2 million. And so I ended up selling the rest of the Edmonton Oilers to the six guys that had the other 49%. And I used the money to help pay for the bad. So I sold a good asset, pay the bad. I should have let the bad one go because it'd be zero.
Mm-hmm.
And that asset that was $16 million or whatever is now worth $1 billion or something now. So it shows a big example of Jimmy Pattison that I did not follow. So anyway, during my kind of heyday, I have all kinds of guys. Everybody's in trouble a little bit. So a guy from Ladner, Langley, somewhere out there, ties up a building in Calgary or someplace, and he needed I can't remember $50,000 or $100,000 deposit. But meanwhile, he'd given me $50,000 or $100,000 to buy a building that he was looking at, and I had his deposit. I don't have a trust account. It's in my account. There's only one account for everything. So then Sam Belzberg got into difficulty and has a hotel in Calgary. And I go ahead and give him a check for $50,000.
So now you're helping somebody out.
I helped
the roles
him
are
with a check
reversed.
for $50,000.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they took the 50 from the 100 that was just given to me. And I only have one account. So, of course, whatever happened, the BC Securities or the real estate people, kind of my name was well known, I guess, or whatever. Oh, we got him. So they charged.
Did they do an audit on you? They did an audit on your account?
I don't know what they did. I don't have audits. I didn't have audits. Anyway, but here's the example. You can go to a bank and borrow $50,000. Well, you can get $50,000 from them and pay it back in 2 days. If you don't pay it back in 2 days, they slap you on the wrist. Call it. So anyway, anyway, he needed 50 that day. I did give him the deposit. He ended up, he got the money to him. But then I needed 50 to cover the 100. So then I finally did it. But meanwhile, the securities people, or whatever, the real estate people, didn't like that and told the girl in Victoria. Anyway, they sued me for whatever. And I went to court. And the judge threw it out. He said, "There's no value." He got it. They got their money back and everything else. They threw it out. The Attorney General in Victoria, a woman, didn't like that. Skalbania, that's a bad thing.
He wanted to make an example out of you.
He wanted to make an example. So they opened it up. They refiled. They filed an appeal on the dismissal. So I have to go to court. And the lawyer or the judge, they got a conviction, which I did spend one day, and whatever. But anyway, it wasn't fun. But it's in effect my fault. It has to be my fault because I wrote the check and I did the money. But I had no trust. The idea of it being a trust account, there's no such thing as a trust. I don't have a trust account.
But didn't you spent a year in house arrest?
No. I don't know how much. Maybe it's 3 months, 4 months,
right?
Something like that. It was a period of time, but it didn't stop my business. whatever.
Well, you had a telephone.
Oh yeah.
So you could keep doing your deals from home.
Whatever I had to do. Whatever I had to do. It wasn't fun, but it happened. But first of all, there was no such thing as a trust account, and there's no money at all except mine. They got a bonus. They got money back. Everybody got their money back. Nothing happened other than the fact you just can't go and borrow money from a bank, basically, and pay it back. You can go into the gun and take some money out of a court. Is what the way they explained it to me. You have 50,000 from a guy with a gun. Even though you come back with 60,000 tomorrow, you still committed the crime. Okay, so that was explained to me, and the hell, that happened to me.
So during this time, it's well known that you played squash or racquetball at the end of every day, and you kept up a very healthy lifestyle during this time. What was your day like? What time did you wake up? Did you run every day?
Well, first of all,
you took care of yourself.
First of all, I'm a great guy for hiding behind my finger. I have so many nice things to talk about and think about. I spend time on that. Anything bad happens to me, the phrase "hiding behind your finger" never happened. So I don't want to talk anymore about it. And the fact I've told you what I have to tell. There are other things that are more educational to kids that are trying to buy something or do something in the real estate business, whatever, which is a great business to be in. If you want to, depending on what everybody wants. Some people want income. Some people want assets. Some people want both. So everybody's live in different parts of the world and different things. So everything has to be adapted. You can't follow rules, particularly real estate. You can a little bit, as long as somebody pays the rent on it. But I don't want to. It's bad enough at remembering the good things that happened to you. Never mind, no bad things ever happened to me. Look at it that way.
How did you deal with the stress during this time? You were very active.
Easy.
You were very athletic.
Family and friends and business partners.
Yeah.
All were very. I mean, first of all, what I've told you today about the origin of that, I never bothered to explain the history of it. There's no trust account, no nothing. It's just my name was. In the old days when I driving home and hit a roadblock, they would let you go. Now I hit a roadblock. They said you go through the system. So in Vancouver in those days, for example, I ended up buying the Georgia Hotel with my wife, and it's Christmas Eve, and I have a car downstairs full of Christmas presents. I jump into my car to go home to my wife. I loaded with presents, and in front of the Grosvenor Hotel, which is just on the street on Howe and the next street, Smythe, a fire hydrant runs across the street as I'm driving there. I hit this fire hydrant, and car goes on top of the fire hydrant, spewing water like shit. And I got a car where I had too much to drink, loaded with Christmas presents. What do? Smart. I get out of the car and run across the street. And I'm sitting there looking at my car, the water going up. All of a sudden, 6 police cars surrounding it and all this kind of stuff. Because the car's over on this hydrant. And all of a sudden, a car drives beside me. And he says, "Skalbania, is that your car?" I said, "Oh, fuck." He says, "Jump in my car." So the policeman takes me to my car, takes all the presents out of the car, puts it in, and drives me home with the presents. They then tow the car away, whatever the hell.
Mm-hmm.
I never got a ticket. I never got anything out of that. And I'm not. It's just that in those days, Vancouver was
A little different.
Willie, a little bit, and things. You had to do something serious to get into trouble.
Yeah.
That was kind of serious, but and it was all my fault.
Times have changed. Nelson, we're in such a highly regulated environment right now. You got to sign a form for every single thing that you do. Every offer I submit, I got to do a calculation for you of what commission you're going to pay me. And I know you know how to do math. Who am I representing? The sky's falling. You better seek legal advice if you're an unrepresented buyer.
If you think you have paper to do here when you're buying and selling real estate, go to California, go to Palm Springs, just sell a lot.
Worse there? It's worse there?
Oh, far more paperwork. That lot that's been sitting there empty all these years, the environmental assessments, these guys' signatures, all the paperwork they have to go through to buy and sell real estate
It's not fun.
is unbelievable. And it's very discouraging. I put it this way, I had to say it's discouraging to do business down there. And never mind here. It's getting bad too.
Have you done deals with Jimmy Pattison?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Didn't you sell him a Rolls Royce?
He bought half of the. I bought the baseball team, Vancouver Canadians, which is a AAA team. I paid $3 million for it. I bought it from a guy that had the hockey team. Anyway, I paid $3 million for this goddamn team. A lot of money for a senior A team. They're now worth multi-million because you don't pay the salary for the players. It's right below the. So I ended up buying it, threw the ball out in the first pitch. All that stuff. Then I sold half to Jimmy Pattison, who ended up, by the way, when I got into difficulty, buying my other half out. He then sold it to Japanese that bought the Seattle Mariners, who then folded the team and moved it to Albuquerque, I think. So the team that's now in Vancouver is not AAA, it's III. It's two league. What AAA is, you don't pay the salary. The salary is paid by the major team that is your affiliate. You pay everything else, but you actually make money on. That's why they're worth a lot of money now. When teams are worth several billion now. I mean, I bought Denver Broncos for $99 million total, and sold it to Pat Bullen, a friend of mine who was in the real estate business in San Diego at that time. But he died, passed away, and his wife sold it for $4.4 billion, and now it's worth $6 or $7 or $8 billion. So the sports teams, if there's a regret in my life, I had every team.
Yeah,
basketball. Imagine I had the Seattle Mariners for $12 million. $12 million. I went to Seattle. As I look at the books, I get the books. It's losing $12 million a year. Now, I'm in the real estate business. When you put up $12 million to buy a building, you get some income. Here you're paying the honor and privilege of writing a check for 12, but you have to write another check for 12 every year. So that was not exactly financeable. So and most teams were like that, including most of NHL. And a lot of guys are borrowing money against the fact it's going up in value. So, for example, I think the Gallardi's bought the Dallas Stars for $250 million or something. So I think, but they're losing 20 or 25 million a year. So, but now they're worth $1.2 billion, $1.5 billion. So you can increase the leverage on it by paying the losses till you sell it or till you make money.
Well, do you want to buy an apartment building? I got 30 listings,
I
Nelson.
see your
listings.
listings. I like your listings. They're all, some of them look good.
I bet you've bought and sold them in the past.
Could be.
The chances are.
And the only reason you'd buy now that shows a 4 or 5% cap on it is maybe you can borrow some money at less than that or sell something.
Well, there's positive leverage now that prices have come off about 35% in the last 3.5 years. So you can borrow in the low threes and get a 5 cap.
Well, only certain things. CMHC, not many people have 3% money or 4% money.
That's right.
So you have to be qualified for that and do a few deals.
That's right.
Anybody that's got some money can't do that. They tell you, pay for it.
So you've seen a lot of cycles. We'll conclude with sort of your, I guess, what you see over the next few years in Vancouver's real estate market. You've been through many cycles. I've only been through, I mean, I've never seen anything like this. If you haven't been in the business for over 30 years, you haven't seen a cycle like this. It's long, it's painful. Do you see things shifting?
Well, huge. If I had a big shift, in the old days when you needed some money, you shook hands and did this or whatever. These days, what a person says and does and comes out of his mouth is not what you hear, even if it's in writing. So that's one of the things that kind of, as you go through life. So what happens? A lawyer or somebody gets in between and gets serious. For example, I have two very close friends, very close, that I know, but they didn't know each other till I introduced them. Both are quite well off. One's suing the other, and the other one's countersuing. Both are going to lose. Both are right, and by the way, both are wrong. But it depends if what right is and what. But it depends what right is and wrong, depending where you are in the world. In Papua New Guinea, when I was there, you could kill your neighbor. It was okay because and eat him and eat him.
That's some fucked up shit.
So there's some for a country that has maybe 4.5, 5 million people. There are roughly 300 or 400 languages. They would never talk to each other. They'd eat each other, but they would have different language. And they all look strange, inbred, except for one island called Bougainvillea, where you had to, when you went to that island, you had to sleep with the chief's wife or the chief's daughters and stuff to get different blood in there. So that's the only country in Papua New Guinea that had people that.
Did you have the privilege of doing business there, Nelson?
Many people in Vancouver did. Many people. Anyway.
That's good stuff. I could talk to you for hours, Nelson. Anyways, I'll have to have you on the show when you're 97 in 10 years.
No.
And we'll catch up to see what deals you've done. But I really appreciate you coming and imparting words of wisdom and some funny stories. And I hope to bump into you at the Bacchus again. You know, I reached out a few weeks earlier and I sent you an email and it bounced. I didn't have your right email and I left a message and I didn't hear from you. And then I called your daughter LP, left a message and emailed, and frankly, I thought you were dead. So I started Googling, looking for your obituary to see if you had passed away. And then I bumped into you and I'm like, oh, fuck, thank God Nelson's alive. Anyways.
Lovely.
Thank you for coming on, Nelson. I really appreciate it. And before I let you go, about 15 minutes before this interview, Nelson sent me a song that his friend wrote about him. So I thought we would just conclude with this song. Enjoy.
Out in the flatlands where the wheat sways like a hymn, he came up with a briefcase and a prairie boy's grin. Dreams too big for the silos, too loud for a church bell toll. He was talking fast, walking bold, a man who played for soul. Bought a team before the ink was dry, sold it while the champagne still ran high. Signed that kid from Brantford, said let the boy skate free, and left the owners wondering, Lord, who he? Nelson Skalbania, soul hustler in Suede, turn ice into fire with every deal he made. From Regina to Vancouver, they felt that shake. He didn't play by the rules, he made the breaks. He was flash in a field of grace. Nelson don't fade, he parades. He'd roll into town in a powder blue caddy, with contracts in his pocket and a phone line to daddy. Wore prairie dust on his cuffs and a gold chain on his chest. Told the bankers you'll get paid after I invest. He danced through courtrooms with a gospel strut, judge banging that gavel, but it just lit up. Turned headlines into rhythm, turned chaos into cash. He was a backroom preacher with a Wall Street stash. Nelson Skalbania, soul hustler in Suede, with a heart full of aim. Nelson don't fade, he parades. And yeah, the law came knocking, but it didn't knock him down. He just smiled, slick as butter, slipped right back through town. He's a legend in the margins, a ghost on the wire. You can't jail ambition, you can't put out that fire. Nelson Skalbania still echoes in the air, where the deals got signed and then the suits would stare. Prairie boy turned midnight king, pulled miracles with a phone and a ring. He was flash in a field of grace. Nelson don't fade, he parades.
Thanks for tuning in to the Goodman Report podcast. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform, give us a 5-star rating, and leave a review. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at goodmanreport.com for the latest listings, market research, statistics, and industry news. Follow us on X and Instagram at Goodman Report, on Facebook at Goodman Commercial, and on LinkedIn under my name, Mark Goodman. On behalf of the entire Goodman team, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time. This podcast is produced by Podfather Creative.